If you asked me last fall how things were going, I probably would have said, pretty good, all things considered. I had a stable job in residential architecture, a house we almost finished renovating ourselves, and a wife, Emily, who still made killer lasagna on Sunday nights. We weren't some Hallmark couple, but we worked. Or at least, I thought we did. We lived in North Seattle, quiet block, maple trees everywhere. We had a 2-bedroom house with a detached garage that I kept meaning to turn into a studio. Next door was Nate, single, maybe mid-30s, always jogging with his AirPods in. Kept to himself, mostly. Nice enough guy. We waved when we took out the trash. It started small. Subtle. Emily got quiet. Not the kind of quiet that comes after a fight. A different kind. Like something was playing in her head that I wasn't part of. I noticed she laughed more when she texted. She'd smile at her phone, not even realize I was in the room. Her lock screen changed to one of those abstract, moody ocean shots. And then she started wearing perfume again, the one she said gave her headaches. One night, while I was brushing my teeth, I asked, "You okay?" She looked up from her side of the bed and blinked. "What?" "Yeah. Why? You've just seemed distracted lately." She smiled, but the kind of smile people give when they're thinking about someone else. "Just tired." I nodded. Didn't push. But something in me knew. I started coming home earlier than usual. Emily worked from home, marketing for some fitness brand. So she had flexible hours. I'd try to catch her off guard. Once, I walked in and saw 2 coffee mugs in the sink, one hers, one black ceramic. We only had 2 of those. I'd brought them home from a trip to Portland. I asked casually, "Did you have company?" She didn't even blink. "Oh, just Nate. He stopped by, wanted to borrow a charger." "Huh. Nate. Mr. AirPods." I should have known then. But I gave her the benefit of the doubt. I gave them both the benefit of the doubt. That was my mistake. What tipped me over wasn't even anything big. It was the doorbell camera. The motion alerts had been acting up, so I opened the app one evening just to check the logs. There, at 11:24 a.m. the previous Thursday, was Nate, standing on our porch. Hoodie, jeans, same gym bag slung over his shoulder. He typed in the door code. He had the code. Walked right in. Like it was his house too. I stared at that footage for a good 5 minutes, heart pounding in my ears. No knocking. No text. Just entered. I didn't say anything to Emily that night. I acted normal. We had dinner. She showed me a meme. I laughed. But that's when it started. That's when the quiet part of me, the part that used to ignore things, shut off. And the part that watches? That remembers? That part turned on. The next day, I bought a hidden camera. 2, actually. And a spare router. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. I was going to record everything. Installing the cameras wasn't hard. Emily thought I was just reorganizing the home network, which wasn't a lie. I told her the Wi-Fi had been spotty, and I needed to upgrade the mesh system. She nodded, barely listening, more interested in whatever was happening on her screen. The first camera went in the den, disguised as a USB charger. The second? Smoke detector in the hallway outside our bedroom. Both fed into a separate, hidden server I set up in the garage. Completely air-gapped. It wouldn't show up on our normal network. I'd encrypted everything and used a burner laptop to monitor the feeds. I didn't know what I was hoping to catch. Maybe nothing. Maybe I wanted to prove myself wrong. Maybe I wanted to see that I was just paranoid, that Nate was just a friendly neighbor and Emily's silence was just stress. But even then, I knew better. It only took 4 days. Thursday, midday. I was at the office, pretending to care about a proposed remodel on Mercer Island, when the garage laptop pinged me through a secure relay. Motion detected. DIN camera. I minimized my work screen and pulled up the feed. There he was. Nate. In our house. Again. He didn't knock. He didn't wait. He walked in like he belonged there, carrying Thai takeout and grinning like he'd won something. Emily met him by the kitchen island. She was barefoot, wearing the shirt I gave her last Christmas. They didn't kiss. Not right away. They just stood close. Like gravity was pulling them together. Like this was routine. Then she leaned in, whispered something. He laughed, and they disappeared out of frame toward the bedroom. I didn't look away. Not because I'm a masochist. Not because I wanted to punish myself. Because I needed it real. I needed to kill the doubt once and for all. The worst part? It didn't feel like an affair. It felt like practice. Like this was something they'd rehearsed. Smooth, casual, like choreography. I sat at my desk for the next hour, pretending to work, heart thudding like a jackhammer in my chest. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. That would have made it about emotion. This was about strategy now. That night, I came home and kissed Emily on the cheek. She smiled and asked if I wanted to watch a movie. I said sure. We sat on the couch, 2 feet apart, watching something I couldn't remember 5 minutes after it ended. I watched her. The way she scrolled through her phone during quiet scenes. The way she never once asked how my day was. She didn't notice the shift. Didn't see the man beside her had already started packing up the life he thought he had. Because what do you do when someone breaks something without knowing? You don't scream. You document. By the second week, I had almost 20 hours of silent, time-stamped footage. Mostly harmless on the surface, 2 people talking, laughing, eating. It could have passed for old friends catching up. If you didn't know the context. If you didn't live in that house. But I knew better. The pattern was clear. Nate didn't knock anymore. He'd show up, type in the code, the one I never gave him, and stroll right in. Like it was his place. Like I was the outsider. What started as just dropping by turned into full afternoons. Then evenings. On a weekday, he began staying longer. Once, I saw him arrive around noon. He didn't leave until almost 5 p.m. No charger in hand. No borrowed tools. Just him, his gym bag, and that casual confidence I'd started to hate. Emily didn't act surprised when he came. She never checked the door. Never texted me. Not even out of courtesy. It was like they had their own schedule, one that didn't include me. At first, I thought maybe I'd find a reason. Something benign. Something I'd misread. But the hours he spent there, they weren't casual. People don't linger in someone else's house without purpose. I stopped asking questions, even in my own head. I knew where this was heading. And yet, I kept quiet. Every day I went to work like normal. Every night, I came home and smiled at my wife like I didn't know she'd made coffee for someone else that morning. That she'd probably laughed harder between noon and 5 than she had with me all week. But inside, I was collecting, watching, waiting. There was no need for a confrontation yet. Confrontation is emotional. Confrontation can be dismissed, explained away. But evidence? Evidence doesn't flinch. It doesn't lie. And it doesn't forget. By now, I had enough clips to draw a clear map of behavior. Emily's days started later. She got dressed like she was meeting someone. Her phone never left her hand, except when Nate was around. Then it would disappear entirely. I started tracking the fridge, the lights, the subtle signs that someone else had been living inside my life while I was busy building it. I didn't feel angry. Not the way people expect. I felt clean, cold, sure, but sharp. And the sharper I got, the more careless they became. I didn't know exactly what Nate and Emily were doing when they disappeared down the hallway, not yet. But I was getting closer to the moment I'd stop needing guesses. Because people who overstay don't just come for company. They come for something they're not supposed to have. And Nate? He had definitely stopped keeping his visits short. I didn't watch the clips right away. I let them pile up, file names, timestamps, folders labeled by date. Part of me still hoped I was wrong. That this was just something emotional. Harmless. Some twisted version of attention-seeking. But deep down, I already knew. What I didn't know, until I opened the folder from Tuesday, was how far it had gone. The DIN camera caught them walking in like always. Smiling. Casual. Emily had her hair tied up in that lazy kind of bun she only ever did on weekends. Nate was carrying groceries. Wine. Baguette. Strawberries. Jesus. They cooked dinner like it was a date night. Opened a bottle of Cabernet I was saving for our anniversary. And then, around 3:10 p.m., they disappeared down the hallway again. Normally, that's where I'd stop watching. Let the files archive. Pretend I didn't need more than I already had. But not this time. Something in me clicked. I scrubbed through the hallway footage, frame by frame, and there it was. The bedroom door didn't fully close. Just enough left open for a sliver of movement to show through. Enough to confirm the one thing I hadn't seen directly. Nate's shirt hit the floor first. Emily's laughter echoed, soft, muffled, and then silence. Rhythmic. Familiar. I closed the laptop. Sat back. My palms were dry. My breath even. I didn't shake. I didn't yell. There was no more wondering. No more excuses. I stood up, poured a glass of water, and stared out the garage window while rain started tapping the roof. Seattle always knew how to set a scene. I'd built this life brick by brick. Mortgage, trust, movie nights, weekend errands, dinner with her parents. I'd shown up every day, thinking we were building something together. Turns out I was just laying the foundation for someone else's fantasy. The betrayal wasn't just physical. It was logistical, strategic. Nate used the keypad. My wife made him dinner. They used my wine, my house, my time. And when they were done, she probably washed the sheets before I got home. I didn't need more proof. But I kept recording. Because what I needed now was leverage. And the right time to use it. I started a file on my desktop. Simple name, Fallout. Inside it, receipts, entry logs, timestamps, network logs from the smart door, even the clip of Nate entering with that smug little shoulder roll he did when he thought no one was watching. He didn't know someone was. Always. Emily had no idea I wasn't just drifting away in silence. I was building the story they didn't want anyone else to hear. And soon, everyone would that I didn't need revenge. I needed clarity, leverage, and for them to realize they weren't playing in secret anymore. That realization started with a birthday. Emily's. She had planned a small get-together. Nothing major. A few friends, some neighbors, wine, candles, and that faux rustic playlist she loved. I offered to take care of the tech, which meant I handled the slideshow on our living room TV. I told her it would be pictures of us over the years. Sentimental stuff, I said with a grin. She smiled, kissed me on the cheek. She had no idea. I prepped it the night before. Not just photos. The first half of the slideshow was exactly what she expected. Wedding day, vacations, family holidays, the usual warm and fuzzy routine. But halfway through, I made the cut. Seamless transition. A new folder loaded. Same format. Same timing. Only now, the photos were time-stamped footage. Emily at home. Nate entering. Them cooking. Laughing. Wine. The hallway. One clip. Two. Then a frozen frame of Nate entering the bedroom. Still no sound. Still subtle. But damning. The video played at 6:17 p.m., right when the candles were being lit. Right when she raised her glass for a toast. People turned to the screen, expecting baby photos or awkward college shots. Instead, they saw Nate, smiling, punching in our door code. Emily froze. I watched it unfold from the kitchen, drink in hand, leaning against the counter like a guest in someone else's house. A neighbor coughed. Someone whispered. Emily tried to get to the remote, but it was too late. I'd programmed a delay. The clips auto-looped. 3 minutes of calm, recorded betrayal. Enough to choke a whole room without a single word being said. She looked at me, mouth open, eyes glassy. Ryan, she started. I raised my glass slightly. To honesty, I said, and left the room. I didn't need applause. I didn't need a meltdown. I just needed that moment, where her carefully controlled world cracked loud enough for everyone to hear. By the time I got to the front door, Nate was already gone. Slipped out through the back like a coward. Of course, I walked to my truck. The air felt lighter. Like I'd just kicked open a door I didn't realize was locked from the inside. My phone buzzed on the drive. Text from friends. Missed call from Emily. A voicemail from Nate. Nervous, blabbering something about a misunderstanding. I didn't respond. I went home, to the place I rented 2 weeks earlier, under a different name. Small apartment. Clean. Paid in full. This wasn't a reaction. It was a plan. And we were just getting started that I didn't hear from Emily for 2 days. That silence told me more than any voicemail ever could. She wasn't shocked I knew. She was shocked I'd gone public. That I'd pulled the curtain back in front of everyone and made her watch. By the time she finally texted, it was exactly what I expected. Can we talk? No apology. No ownership. Just a weak attempt to grab the reins again. I didn't answer. Instead, I forwarded everything to my attorney, someone I'd hired weeks earlier, back when Nate was still just borrowing a charger. Her name was Valerie Lang. Iron-spined, surgical, no patience for drama. Exactly who I needed. She reviewed the footage, the logs, the copies of our joint account activity. Then she looked at me and said, "We're not just filing for divorce. We're going for strategic withdrawal." I raised an eyebrow. That a legal term? It is now. Emily and I had no kids. The house was in my name. I bought it before we got married. She never bothered to add herself to the title. I had the prenup. Ironclad. Reviewed twice. She'd signed it on a wine buzz, brushing it off like just paperwork. Turns out, it was more like a trapdoor. The clause she never read properly? Infidelity nullifies spousal support. Any claim to equity? Gone. And all those little extras, flights, wine, shared passwords, were now proof of misuse. We filed Friday. I had Valerie send the notice to Emily's work email. Not because I'm cruel. because she always checked that one first. Her response came the same day. A shaky, desperate paragraph, pretending to be calm. I wish you'd talk to me first. We could have handled this privately. That made me laugh. She'd been handling me privately for months. It was time she learned what public felt like. The next day, I received an email from someone unexpected. Nate's wife. Didn't even know he was married. Her name was Danielle. The subject line was simple. We should talk. We met at a coffee shop in Queen, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days, tight ponytail, oversized coat, trembling hands gripping a paper cup. I thought he was just working late, she said, not even waiting for introductions. Then he started guarding his phone like it was gold. Wouldn't even leave it face up. I nodded. Been there. She slid a manila folder across the table. Inside, bank statements, screenshots, hotel charges that matched mine. Same dates. Same lies. Turns out Emily wasn't the only one. Nate was running a rotation. I'm filing this week, Danielle said, voice steady now. I figured you'd want a copy of the overlap. I didn't smile, but I felt it, the shift. I wasn't the victim in this story anymore. I was the author. I walked out of that coffee shop into gray Seattle drizzle with a folder under my arm and a court date on the horizon. Emily had built a fantasy on my time, my money, my trust. Now I was about to demolish it, legally, cleanly, and by the book. No yelling. No chaos. Just the undeniable weight of truth with a lawyer's lead. Her head. The court date was set for mid-March. Emily never contested. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was fear. Maybe she finally understood she was in no position to bargain, not when I held every piece of the puzzle and the frame it fit into. The hardest part? I didn't feel satisfaction. I didn't feel like I'd won. I just felt done. One afternoon, before everything was finalized, she showed up at the house. My house. She didn't knock, just stood outside in a gray coat, arms wrapped around herself like the cold might forgive her. I opened the door, leaned on the frame. Hey, she said softly, voice like old fabric. I waited. I don't know what I thought would happen, she said. I guess I thought maybe you'd cool off. Cool off, I repeated. She nodded. You've always been calm. I thought if I gave you space. You thought silence meant surrender, I said. It didn't. She swallowed. Look down. I made a mistake. No, I said. You made a choice. Repeatedly. With a neighbor. In my house. Her eyes welled up, but I didn't flinch. I'm not here to beg, she said. I wanted you to know I didn't plan for it to go that far. I nodded once. That's the thing about doors, I said. You don't fall through them by accident. You open them. She didn't argue. Didn't reach for me. Didn't ask for forgiveness. Because deep down, she knew the man standing in front of her now wasn't hers anymore. He'd been gone long before the paperwork was filed. She left quietly. I stood in the doorway a long time after she disappeared down the block. Not out of grief. Out of peace. It was over. All of it. The lies. The guessing. The weight of pretending everything was fine just to keep a picture on the wall. I moved 2 months later out of Seattle up toward the Sound. Bought a fixer-upper with a view of the water and enough silence to think clearly again. I started working with my hands more. Built a workbench. Took on freelance design jobs that didn't come with office politics or client wine nights. Sometimes I'd see Nate jogging in old footage when I cleaned out the archives. I didn't delete them. Not out of spite. Out of remembrance. Not of betrayal, but of who I became because of it. Strong. Clear. Dangerous in a calm way. One day, someone asked me if I'd ever trust again. I shrugged. Maybe, I said. But trust isn't something you give now. It's something you watch earn its way in. They nodded. Didn't push. Because that's the thing about surviving betrayal. You don't go back to who you were. You go forward to someone who sees everything and still chooses peace over destruction. Not for them. For you.